Hey, it's your friend Choice CJ here, and this is my draft analysis video for MPL season number 7. Very excited to be returning to MPL for another round. We were in MPL season 6 last year. Big thanks to Blue Rogue, Moxie Infernape, and Regulator for adding me last year and for inviting me back once again. I'm very excited, like I said, for this season. There's only 12 coaches this time around instead of 16 like last year. And then 4 of those coaches are returning from MPL season 6. 4 of them are promotions from MPL minors, and then there's 4 brand new coaches that were added. So, gonna be a lot of fun. And there's a couple of interesting things that are happening this season that are a little unique that I'll talk about now as we talk about the format of the draft. So, with 12 teams, it makes it a little bit easier to come up with a draft plan. It's a point-style draft with only 110 points. I actually kind of prefer 110 versus like 120 or 125 that I've seen some other leagues do, because I think it forces you to be a little bit more creative with your building and your drafting, instead of just being able to get something that's a bunch of mons that are really powerful, especially if you have the ability to go to draft fewer mons. In this league, I think you could draft between 9 and 11 mons if you chose to. So if you, instead of getting like a really strong draft with 9 mons and 120 points, it just makes you slightly weaker, which I think is good. But one thing that they're doing this season that I think is pretty smart is they're actually awarding bonus points to your draft pool based on meeting certain milestones. So if you complete your battle on time, if you complete your upload on time, if you do your game on Wi-Fi, etc., you actually get half a bonus point for each of those things that you do. There's like 5 things in total, I don't remember exactly. But you have the potential to earn 2.5 points per week, which means by the time the free agency ends, which is at the end of week 8, you have potentially earned an additional 20 points, so you could have potentially 130 points to work with. And along with that, you can actually use your bonus points in trades as leverage, I guess, or as, use it as you guys know what I'm trying to say. And I don't want to say it's like you use it as like ammunition. But you can use it to sweeten the deal. Maybe if like you and your opponent want to make a trade, or you and another coach want to make a trade, and like it's a little bit in your favor or in their favor, you guys can even it up by throwing in some points. And it also works too, like if the points just don't quite line up perfectly. Like if one person's going to go up to 121 points because of the result of a trade, or 111 points or whatever, you can toss in an extra point just to make it easy. So that's pretty nice. You have 20 Z points that you can use throughout the draft. I don't know if that pool grows or not. I can't remember. But you can specify. You can spend a number of Z points up to like the mon's value. So like for example, like Celesteal is 18 points. So you can spend 18 points to make Celesteal your Z mon. And then you have 2 points left over. And again, yeah, I don't know if that one grows or not. But yeah, that's I think the main unique thing with the draft in this season that I can think of. It's just a good way to help coaches stay on schedule, keep them incentivized to do that, and it also makes it so that way you can upgrade your team as the season goes along. So that's pretty fun. I'm hopefully going to take advantage of that. For the draft order, I ended up with the 3rd overall pick, and I was pretty happy about that. There were 3 Pokemon that I was looking at. And I figured that at least 2 of them were going to go before me. There's a couple mons that got added to the draft pool, or I guess there's one mon that got added to the draft pool this season, then a few that got added last season that are returning. The one that got added was Ash Greninja, and then returning from last year were Sheer Force Lando I, Tapu Lele, Mega Mawile, Mega Kang with No Seismic Toss, and then I think also Mega Latios. I think those are the main ones that I could remember from last season. So with my pick, I was hoping to either get Ash Greninja, Tapu Lele, or Tapu Koko. I was really hoping to get one of the first 2, just because I have used Tapu Koko before, and I've never used the other ones, just because they're not typically allowed. But those picks did go number 1 and number 2. So to me, at number 3, I had to quote-unquote settle for Usain Bolt, my Tapu Koko. I say quote-unquote because obviously Tapu Koko in most drafts is the best mon in the format, and it usually goes number 1 overall, so I'm not sad to have to take that as a consolation prize. This mon is just ridiculous because it has just enough coverage to make it hard to switch into. And then the fact that it has momentum with a U-turn and volt switch makes it a really great pivot. Electric Surge gives both its physical and its special electric moves a lot of power. And then it has like quite a neat collection of utility moves like Calm Mind, Taunt, Defog, things like that. Nature's Madness as well. So it's, you know, mainly an offensive pivot, but it has some other really great utility, and it's just you know, very hard to stop once your opponents let their checks get weakened, because it can pretty much take out anything it needs with like Dazzling Gleam, Brave Bird, HP Ice, whatever it may be. So I haven't used this since P4G Next Generation, which I used a little more than a year ago. So happy to have Coco back on the squad for sure. So with my next pick, I wanted something that's going to pair really well with Tapu Koko, of course. And you know, I'm thinking about things that Koko lures in. It's mostly like grass types and ground types. And so versus the grass types, I thought Infernape would be really awesome, because I can then go into Infernape as they switch into their grass types and threaten that thing with a fire move. And I can either go for a U-turn to continue the cycle of momentum with my Tapu Koko, or I can take it as an opportunity to go for a variety of setup moves that Infernape has. It has Bulk Up, it has Sword Stance, it has Nasty Plot. You know, so it can take advantage of any of those moves and throw off really powerful hits. It doesn't have a ton of base stats. Like its attack and defense, or sorry, its attack and special attack aren't that amazing, but it just has so much base power on most of its most powerful moves. So like Close Combat, Flare Blitz, and then also moves like Gunk Shot, Earthquake, things like that all have a ton of base power. So especially if you get Infernape boosted, it's just gonna plow through things, and it's really nice. This also has a nice collection of support moves. It has Taunt, Slack Off, Stealth Rock, Endeavor, things like that. So Infernape's not a one-trick pony either. It can be physical, special. It can be surprisingly bulky with the right investment. It's got good priority, and yeah, just everything. It's a great choice mon if you want to run choice band, choice scarf, or whatever. Infernape is your guy. So Infernape on my team is going to be named Zuko, of course, after the anti-hero turned into regular hero on Avatar: The Last Airbender. Quite excited about that. So this is like basically my offensive core. I have some other offensive mons on my team for sure, but I feel like the rest of the draft I dedicated to bulk, which is a little bit unusual for me. I don't necessarily draft so much bulk. I just rely a lot on typings and resist parries for switching into things. Otherwise, I just prioritize offense. But for this draft, like, I knew that I wanted a good Tapu Lele answer because there's not many of those that exist in the league. And so I decided to go with Alolan Muck in the third round. This is named Trip. This is also a returning member from my P4G Next Generation team. And then Muck, as you guys obviously know, has a ton of good utility options that were added in Gen 7. The ability Gluttony in combination with the different 50% berries, like Figgy Berry, for example, makes this thing a pretty big sponge. Like, there's just not a lot of Pokemon that can kill it in one hit due to its typing and due to Gluttony plus Figgy Berry. And then you can also abuse that further with things like Recycle, which is really nice. If you don't want to run those sorts of sets, you can run AV. This thing is very, very bulky with an AV, especially because, once again, it can only really be threatened immensely by ground types. And then it's just got lots of other cool options like Curse Recycle and things like that. It even has Rock Polish, which is hilarious. And it has Taunt. So, yeah, I like this as a psychic answer on my team. Psychics in general are really scary, but then something like Tapu Lele gets thrown into the mix, and you have to have a really solid response. So that's what Muck's going to be. My next pick is a Pokemon I've been wanting to use ever since GBA D-League Season 4, when it got sniped from me by my good buddy Gregulator. And that is Gliscor, aka my Bruce Wayne. It's funny, because in that season I had to draft Gligar, and I named it Dick Grayson. Which is the in real life name of Robin, and so obviously Gliscor had to be Batman, aka Bruce Wayne. But Gliscor is just such a good mon in general because of its typing, its ability, its stats. Like, it's very fast, which is nice for a wall. And you can invest it to be fully Fizz-Def. You can make it really, really tanky, invest a lot into Spadef. And it even has good options in terms of setup, like Swords Dancing, Curse, and things like that. It has Taunt, Stealth Rocks, U-Turn, Defog, pretty much any support move that you can think of. And yeah, just if it's not a water or an ice type, good luck killing this thing. It's just, like I said, bulky enough if you invest broadly enough in its stats that nothing can kill it, and it just gets great recovery with Poison Heal. And especially if you pack like Protect or something like that, it just gets so hard to kill. So happy to have this. Having a really good ground resist was important to me because my first 3 mons were all ground weaks. So that was partially what motivated me taking Gliscor as well. And then with my 5th pick, I got the sort of quote-unquote perfect partner for Gliscor. This one throws back to the DPP days, and that's Empoleon. Empoleon is nicknamed You Like My Tux because he's got a very fashionable tuxedo that he's wearing, as you guys can obviously see. The Empoleon and the Gliscor cover each other's weaknesses perfectly. Gliscor being weak to water and ice, Empoleon resists both of those moves, and then Empoleon is weak to ground fighting, electric. I'm sure there's more, but Gliscor resists all of those. So it's very nice to have in combination with Gliscor. Anyway, Empoleon, it's not necessarily a great offensive Pokemon, although 111 special attack is nothing to sneeze at. And it gets a good enough move pool, with Ice Beam, Grass Knot, Hydro Pump, etc. Mainly it's there for support with things like Defog, Stealth Rocks, Roar, as I'm sure our good pal MV would let you know that Empoleon is good at all those things, especially defogging. In fact, it might be the best at defogging. I will neither confirm nor deny whether that's true or not, but I'll just move on. And Empoleon also has some kind of cheeky options because it does have SD plus Defiant. So you can switch it in on potential defogs from your opponent and actually get a +2 attack boost, which is pretty fun. So just something to keep in the back pocket in case a set like that ever is useful in a matchup. So yeah, I really like the defensive core of Empoleon plus Gliscor. Then you tack onto that Muck, and it just becomes pretty unkillable. So up to this point, I'm still I'm feeling a little bit better versus grounds, but I'm still not feeling amazing. So the next 2 picks, I am gonna try and shore up my ground weakness a little bit. First, we're gonna take Man Bear Pig, my Piloswine. This is a returning member from BBL Season 2, where we're currently doing quite well. Piloswine's been a big reason for that. Piloswine is just very sturdy at getting up rocks and applying offensive pressure. And the fact that it has a pretty powerful Ice Shard priority move makes it good for dealing with things like Lando, Zygarde, etc. It means that they can't automatically kill me, or forces them to run a Yachi Berry instead of a attack boosting item or a Z move or anything like that. So I'm quite excited for that. My next Pokemon is going to be Mesprit, aka Jean Grey, after the obvious famous X-Men character. But I like that it is a Psychic type with Levitate. It means that I can actually abuse Rest Talk sets under electric terrain. I was actually thinking about Cresselia a little bit, but Cresselia has its own utility, but I like the utility that Mesprit has just a tiny bit more, at least on a 110-point budget. With Stealth Rocks, U-Turn, Healing Wish, it gives Mesprit some good well-roundedness. And then, yeah, like I said, I can abuse Calm Mind, Rest Talk sets, and not be deterred by electric terrain. That's kind of the main thought there. So yeah, hopefully with Gliscor, Mesprit, and Piloswine, we can deal with grounds well enough, because I'm not drafting anything else that can really deal with them. My next pick is sort of my, I wouldn't say my least favorite pick of the draft, but it's sort of was like a throw-in pick. There's a couple things I was considering here, because basically my last 3 Pokemon are all locked in. 2 of them are electric terrain abusers, and then 1 of them is my Mega, which can no longer get sniped. After the end of round 2, all teams but 3 had already taken their Megas, and the other 2 teams, I spoke with them, and they did not want my Mega, so I said, well, screw it, there's no reason to take it until the very end. So yeah, I basically have 5 points left in my budget, taking into account the 3 mons that I want to draft next. So I'm looking at what are the options for 5 points, and I landed on Kangaskhan, aka Mama Boucher, after the Water Boy. Just because obviously Kangaskhan is the mama. So Kangaskhan, it's nice because it's fast, bulky, has some decent support with like Wish and things like that. And it has a pretty good move pool. It has lots of, it's got good priority with Sucker Punch. And it's got the elemental punches and things like that. So, having a good normal type is always good just because lots of teams, unless they're drafting multiple steel types or a steel type and a rock type, don't necessarily have a good way to deal with normals. And of course, like Kangaskhan gets Earthquake anyway, so it can break down both of those things. So yeah, it's just fat. It is pretty strong. It has Wish. And out of a 5-point mon, that's about as much as I could hope for. Other things I was looking at here were Grand Bull, so that I had another switch in for fairy types. Sorry, for dragon types besides Tapu Koko and Empoleon. Ditto, potentially. I also wanted Golbat in this spot because I'm a little bit fairy weak and it's another ground resist. But Golbat ended up getting sniped. So Kangaskhan is what I chose. How long it stays on the team, we'll see. But in the interim, I think it's a pretty reliable option. Also, it goes without saying that Scrappy is a really cool ability for making it able to hit ghost types, which are otherwise annoying for Kangaskhan. So next, like I said, I want to draft the first of my 2 electric terrain abusers, and that is Sceptile. I wanted, obviously Hawlucha is sort of the ideal partner for Tapu Koko, just because its stab moves are so hard to switch into once it gets that acrobatics boost. But it was like 13 points, and with this budget, I didn't think it was quite worth it, and I already had a pretty powerful fighting type in Infernape. So Sceptile with Unburden I thought would be a pretty cheeky option. So I can run E-Seed on this thing, and it has, the setup options aren't quite as amazing as Hawlucha's are, but it does get both Swords Dance and Work Up. And it gets a relatively decent move pool, including Nature Power, for some Thunderbolt action underneath electric terrain. So we can use that to hit flying types that otherwise might like to deal with Sceptile relatively easily. And because this thing is so damn fast, 120, and a lot of matchups I'm not going to need to invest a lot of speed if I'm running E-Seed. So I can put a bit into bulk. It doesn't have great natural bulk stats, so with some investment and that electric seed boost, we should be able to set up a Swords Dance or Work Up for free versus anything. Then I have my second E-Terrain abuser in Alolan Raichu, aka Boar. Boar is it's a double meaning here. Boar is a famous physicist. And so, the electricity in physics is very intertwined, so I thought it was a good name. But then also Boar is the son of or he's the father of Odin, who is the father of Thor, and Thor and electric and stuff, there's an association there. But yeah, for 5 points, Alolan Raichu is pretty much a no-brainer, just because it can abuse the electric terrain with its Surge Surfer ability, get off a lot of damage with the electric terrain boost. And, it has some setup options, too, that make it pretty cool. Nasty Plot, things like that. There's just not a lot of Pokemon that deal with the combination of moves that Alolan Raichu has. Not only does it get Electric and Psychic Stab, it gets Surf, it gets Focus Blast. It's just very hard for Pokemon to switch into this thing. It's got some fun support options as well, like Encore and Wish and Knockoff and stuff like that. But mostly, I anticipate this thing late-game cleaning in a lot of matchups. I use Tapu Koko to wear down grass and ground types that otherwise might annoy Raichu. But then it can come in and clean up. So, not a lot to think about here, but I knew the moment I drafted Tapu Koko that I was going to want this. Then my last mon is an old favorite of mine. It is Leonardo, the Mega Blastoise, named, of course, after the Ninja Turtles. This will be my 3rd or 4th time using Mega Blastoise. I don't quite recall. But this thing is awesome just because it can take one hit from basically anything that's not super effective stab and then throw off a really powerful hit in return because of its ability Mega Launcher. So it's got basically Stab Aura Sphere, Stab Dark Pulse, Stab, Dragon Pulse. Has other coverage moves as well, like Flash Cannon and Ice Beam, that make it very good. And then, of course, Blastoise has Rapid Spin. Don't have a Rapid Spinner on my team up to this point, but now I've got probably the best one in the game because it can beat pretty much any spin blocker out there. So that's quite nice. It even has some fun options like Refresh for dealing with status moves and things like that. So yeah, I think it's awesome and well-rounded. It's not even that slow either. You can run fast sets of Blastoise and apply a ton of pressure, especially if your opponent is weak to water. But yeah, Blastoise I thought was valuable for Rapid Spin, but also as a good Ice, Fire, and Water switch in. I'm a little bit lean versus those typings right now. Like Water, like it's not that I'm concerned about Water. Like I can revenge kill them in a lot of ways with my electric types plus Sceptile. But yeah, just having my best switch in be Empoleon didn't seem like an amazing option. So that's why I went Blastoise over some of the other mons that were still available at this point in the draft. But yeah, with that said, that's the whole team. As I mentioned at the beginning of my draft, or like at the middle of the draft video, it doesn't have quite as much offense as I'm used to. I have quite a lot of bulk. Some with good recovery, some not. But I overall like it, and I'm excited to give it a shot. And, just Coco in general, I think, is practically unstoppable. It doesn't even matter what kind of team you put it on. It's going to get kills. And I did make it my Z user for what it's worth. So it just makes it even harder to find good switch-ins to it. Whether you go for whatever the electric one is, or you go for like the Z Nature's Madness or Z Twinkle Tackle or anything like that. I think Coco is just amazing, and I think I have the right mons to support it. So with that said, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date on all my MPL action, and so that way you can stay up to speed on all my other latest and greatest gaming and Pokemon content. We are going to have BBL playoffs coming up really soon, so I want you guys to show your support for the Oriolus for that. And yeah, liking and subscribing is a great way to help make sure that that can happen. So until the next time, I will see you guys later.